guys, welcome to Somewhere in the Middle. I'm Nikki.
And I'm Angie.
Today we are looking at what college is best for you. I chose historically black colleges and universities.
I chose private Christian universities
That were not historically black.
that were not historically black.
Moving forward, we'll consider those PWIs or predominantly white institutions. Okay. In the black community, that is a term that I have recently learned. So we're going to use it. Okay. So we're looking at HBCU versus PWI. What do you think is the major factor in picking one over the other as a black person?
I think a lot of it has to do with high school too. I think it's where you went to high school. I think it's your friends, and I think it's your family. I think those three are probably the top three factors that someone takes into consideration when they choose what university they're going to go to.
Okay, so with that being the case, how did your high school influence your decision to go to a PWI?
So I did graduate from Jack Yates. Woohoo! But before I went to Jack Yates, I did go to the High School for Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice, which was a magnet high school that concentrated for people who wanted a career in either law enforcement or as an attorney. And I had it set, in my mind that I was going to go to law school and, that I was going to go to Harvard and things like that. And I thought at the time, I believed that I would have a leg up on my education if I went to a white college instead of a black college.
So you were cognizant of the difference and you literally felt like not going to a HBCU would be better for your career.
I did at the time. But at the time, go ahead.
Now, when you say Jack Yates, that is a predominantly black high school here in Houston, Texas.
It is.
So when you were at law enforcement, what was the racial makeup of that population?
It was mixed. It was predominantly female, but it was white, black, orange, yellow, purple. Some of everybody there.
Okay, so for whatever reason, your education in high school made you think that a HBCU wasn't going to be the best option for you. So for my decision, my high school didn't play a factor in where I decided to go to school. I went to high school all 4 years at Scarborough, which at the time was considered more so of a white high school in a greater city. But if you went there, you knew that it was kind of we felt like we were almost a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic. Like we felt like everybody was equally represented, or maybe I just felt like that. I don't know. But I know that in the city it's considered a white school. But my decision to go to a HBCU right out of high school came more so from what I saw on TV. I saw the Bayou Classic and I saw, Grambling doing this amazing halftime show. And I was just like, wow, that looks amazing. Even though I had no intent of being in the band, I think that was really my first experience with the HBCU. And so I just wanted to go to Grambling from that point forward. For me, it didn't have anything to do with the type of degree I was getting. Once I researched Grambling and realized that they did have a good education program and I knew I wanted to be a teacher, to me that kind of solidified my decision. But the people who I knew who were degreed had degrees from Texas Southern, which is another black university. So for me, it wasn't the option. I never considered not going to a black school, I guess you could say.
Right. I went to predominantly white schools my entire life. And it was a culture shock when I went to Yates. And to be honest, now looking back in hindsight, I didn't feel like I would fit in at a black institution. TSU was right around the corner from, Yates. Spent a lot of time on TSU's grounds in high school. But there was always a disconnect from my culture, my environment, and my community and who I was, just because of what I had been exposed to and, my entire life. I didn't think I would fit in. And then I did have a, preconceived notion that going to a white university would be better. I thought if I went to, some, private Ivy League of the South, that it would propel my career differently, but I didn't know what my career was. So to be honest and fully transparent, I just knew that if I went to school, I would get a job and I would make money. I didn't have any other kind of direction, any other kind of guidelines for that. I saw on TV people who go to college get jobs and make money, and that's all I was trying to do.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely the training or the understanding that I had of the world. If I get a degree, I'll be able to take care of myself and my family and won't have to live in the projects. So that was a no-brainer. So how did it turn out? How was your experience in a PWI? Let's start with your undergraduate.
So undergrad degree, ironically, I felt like I didn't fit in there either. So when I got to HBU, um, it was great. I I had a really great counselor, and they had my degree plan all figured out, but I had to make decisions that I didn't do any research about. I wasn't ready, but they were like, "Oh, what do you want your degree to be in?" And I picked one, looking at a piece of paper, but I had no idea. I used to want to be an attorney. All as I was a little girl, I wanted to be a lawyer. Wanted to be a lawyer, and when I got to college, I didn't know if I wanted to be an attorney anymore. So I was sitting there in front of my counselor, and they're like, "You got to pick a degree." And I was like, and I'm looking at the paper. I was like, business. Oh, perfect. So here's the plan. This is what you should do. And here's all these resources. And here's all these groups that you need to be a part of. And it was like 90 miles an hour at that point. And I didn't have a chance to get off track. And so here I was, working on my business degree. But HBU had a different requirement to graduate. You also had to do community service. And that's why I found my humanitarian side. I had to do projects, acts of service in order to graduate from college. And that opened up, a whole different world for me. But the classes were smaller. It was a lot of one-on-one attention. I was able to go to my professors' houses. I could call them on the cell phone. It was different. I don't know if somebody at, TSU, Grambling had the same experience, but I felt like at HBU, there was a lot of one-on-one attention with my professors, with any of the administration and myself to help fill in any gaps, any questions that I had.
So you started your conversation off saying you didn't fit in. You didn't feel like you fit in. Where did that come from? Because you got away from
So,
that real quick.
oh, well, say Nikki likes to bring it back. So I had a baby, right? I had a baby when I was like, 2 or 3 years old. And so going to college, I was a commuter. I didn't live on campus. So I stayed at home with my grandparents. And I feel like I didn't get that full college experience because I would go to school and then I would leave because I either had to go to work or go pick up my child. So when everybody else was at college, going to little parties and the mixers and the meet and greets, I didn't get a chance to participate in that. So I still kind of felt alienated from the community of college because I was there, but then I wasn't, and I couldn't, be a part of some of the other things that, was going on.
So as we look at our actual topic of PWI versus HBCU, how do you feel that going to college, post-secondary education, how do you feel that not going to HBCU or going to a predominantly white school, what was the outcome of that in that aspect?
So now the outcome I feel like was beneficial. So like when I got ready to graduate from HBU, like I said, there was a lot of one-on-one attention between the professors and and myself. And there were a lot of on-campus recruiting events that the professors would, help us get prepared for. I was able to get, multiple job offers when I was an undergrad.
It sounds like you talking about the difference between a public versus a private university, which is
Well, I mean, but I didn't go to an HBCU, so I don't have anything to compare it to. So I don't know what y'all did, and I don't know if that was different. That's why I'm telling you what it was, so that when you share your experience, I can see if those type of things went on at a HBCU. In my mind, those things didn't go on. And in my mind, there's, HBCUs were overpopulated, people were partying, having a good time. I don't know. That's for you to tell me.
Well, I didn't go to a private school either, so I'm quite sure that my experience at public schools would have been completely different in a private school with a smaller setting, obviously. But going back to the cultural aspect of it, because again, I don't think those things had anything to do with whether the school was black or white. I think they had to do with it being private versus public. But culturally, one thing that I saw, again, going from a predominantly or considered a predominantly white high school, when I went to Grambling, this was my first experience with Black people en masse, just as a baseline, taking care of business. Like, I had good friends in the neighborhood, and people who, working class families, everybody taking care of their kids. It wasn't a upper middle class, probably lower middle class neighborhood, but it wasn't a bunch of crackheads walking around. It was a decent neighborhood. But to go and be around all of these Black people from all over the country who were, not just being educated, but excelling and succeeding and, graduating with honors and, doing all these things in the community, that was my first outlook on myself as a Black person, and not seeing it in a negative way, if I could say that. Despite my family being, me having educated family members, and, despite what I saw in my family, Black people en masse to me have been represented as some negative. At the end of the day, when you watch on TV, you watch the news, you hear all these negative things. This was my first time to look at Black people as a whole as something extremely positive and powerful. So that's where I'm like, dang, the same people I was out with till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to the 7 o'clock class, they going too. They heading to the library with their backpacks and briefcases. I know he ain't in no suit. He was just like, we was just doing some real crazy stuff last night. Here he go. You know what I'm saying? So that's where my outlook on the whole culture came from, because I realized that I had been miseducated. I realized that my exposure had been so limited when it came to Black people that I was brainwashed in a negative way against my own people. And so beyond that, I began to see that there were so many more sides of us. The whole concept that we have trouble getting along, or that we have trouble being together in groups, or Black women in general can't get along. And I never was one to join. I'm not a joiner. Okay. So I don't have Greek letters, or I didn't do very much joining. But I like to participate in things. And so as I participated in different things, with people that I didn't know, that we had no reason to be bonded to each other, we just all had positive experiences with each other. And so that, I came home, I see a Black person in the grocery store, I'd be like, hey, they'd be like, I see somebody, and back then, late 90s, it wasn't a whole bunch of us rocking natural hair. So if I saw somebody with natural hair, I'd be like, hey, girl, Right. And so it just gave a whole different aspect to me of Black people, and in a positive way.
Oh, I mean, and that's a very good, experience. Sometimes I regret that I didn't, attend any university, that was predominantly, Black or HBCU, because I kind of felt like I missed out on, some of that bonding that could happen, that, Black camaraderie that exists, when you are all together, in the same kind of community. But I don't think that, but because I grew up in like the neighborhood, and I still was a part of, the community, I still was friends with those same people. So I still hung out with them, outside of school. And like I mentioned before, I was a commuter. So I would go to school and I would come back. But I would come back to that same community, right there by TSU, right there by the other people who did get a chance to, be a part of it. So I still got the community, of it, but I didn't have,
But how you feel when homecoming come around? Everybody heading up to PV homecoming. Everybody, you know what I mean?
Still would go. I still would go to PV homecoming. I still went to Bayou Classic. I still participated in, the events. I just didn't go to school there.
I guess, honey.
I mean,
But
I wish,
look,
I wish I would have went to Grambling with you. I want to go to LSU, but that's not an HBCU. But I wish I would have did something different. I wish I would have stayed on campus. My experience and your experience were two different ones. You stayed on campus when you first got to Grambling. You just stay on campus? Where'd you live?
I did not. I never lived on Grambling State's campus.
Where did you live going to Grambling?
I lived in the hills of Grambling. My family lived there. And so you know how I take care of Aunt Kitty. That's because that's how she took care of me. When I went to Grambling, she lived there. She worked at Grambling. And my brother and sister, they went to Grambling Lab School, Grambling Middle Magnet. So they were there already. And so when I first moved out there, I lived with her for the first semester. Then I moved to a little off campus, it was like a hotel, and it transferred to student housing, part of the university. Then when I got there, it was student housing that wasn't part of the university. So I lived in a hotel for a year or so, and then we got grown and moved to Ruston, which is the neighboring town, girl, in a little trailer. And then I went back to North Campus, which was that little hotel thing. So no, I never lived on Grambling State's campus. I didn't live on campus until I transferred to Prairie View. By then I was grown. I couldn't care less what them people were talking about. I could not care less. I was just ready to graduate. So right. I never had that on-campus experience other than the fact that I was just down the street from campus. I still did the stuff campus kids did,
Right. See, and I didn't get a chance to do that. Like when you first did freshman mixer where you get to Black Student Union, I didn't get a chance to do, any of that. So I'm still friends with the people that weren't hey people.
Yeah, I just have maybe like one, two friends from Grambling and 1, 2 friends from Prairie View. And I'm probably Facebook friends with more from Texas Southern because that's where I got my master's from. And I think Facebook social media was coming around during that time. But I'm like, as far as friends, not really a whole lot.
Aww.
Hey, Tasha. Keisha. And Keely, my 2 college friends. Anywho, but so with that, do you feel that you were exposed to any racism? Because I know you talked about not being able to fully be yourself around those people. What was that like?
It was kind of hard, at first because I thought, I'm not going to be accepted. People, I think a lot of it was self-imposed, feelings that I would have. Oh, they don't want to be friends with me because I was so different, from them. But ironically, I found it to be different. I'm still friends with two girls that I met. One is of Indian descent. I want to say Pakistani, and if I'm sorry, someone if I got it wrong. And I'm still friends with people who had different nationalities than me, but they still embraced me, they still wanted to be my friend and hang out and, let's go to this parties. I'll pick you up. One of the things I did find a lot of my friends, were affluent. So, money wasn't an object. Oh, I got you. I'll pick you up, bought breakfast and drinks and, the whole shebang. But I didn't really experience racism. But I think I had, because of my background, and I had been at all white schools from elementary all the way to college, that I had a thick skin when it came to it. So if somebody did do something, I ignored it like I did in middle school, like I did in high school, like I did in elementary. So I think I had just kind of grew thick skinned. I'm sure it existed, but I don't have any particular instances that I can recall where somebody said something or did something that was inappropriate, out of line, racist, why I wanted to call, Al Sharpton,
So, and then also too, with your background, you kind of knew the ins and outs of dealing with these people as well.
True.
probably.
True. I knew how to be a true chameleon, and I don't know if I've shared this before, but I felt like I've always been two Angelas up until recent history. There was Angela who was at school, Vanguard, gifted and talented, 4.0 GPA, brilliant, and then there was Angie from Sunnyside, the girl, from around the way. I always felt like there were two me's, always.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it all comes down to where you're comfortable, where you see yourself thriving the most. Um, I have been recently in a Facebook group, HBCU alumni Facebook group, and I've read a lot of perspectives that I previously didn't know were really out there, as far as people explaining the significance of going to a HBCU, the significance of making that decision, the significance of helping their kids make that decision as well. And I started thinking about that, in the same light. My kids, my daughter and my son, their most of their first 10 years of my daughter's life, we lived in Third Ward across the street from Texas Southern, where I got my master's. And we would walk over there and, go to the art gallery or listen to the band play or whatever. And so she won't have that experience or that unfamiliarity with Black, excellence. And then she grew up also going to Shape Center, where, positive Blackness out loud, not just understated, just yes, we're Black, yes, we're positive. No, out loud, overstated positive Blackness that she's been, exposed to. So will it be as critical for her to go to a HBCU as I think now that it was for me to see that and to have that other, that critical part of education? I don't know. But, at the end of the day, it'll be up to her, but I will encourage her to go to HBCU at the end of the day.
I encourage, Adrian went to Shape too. My daughter went to Shape. We were super pro Black when she was growing up. We did a lot of things. She graduated from Yates too. Yay. And she was fully immersed in Black culture, Black people, Black things, so that she could see, Black excellence. The United, not the United, whatever, the Urban League, just all types of stuff that she was a part of. And when she got ready to go to college, she chose a university. It wasn't an HBCU, but at that point, I just wanted her to go to college, and, figure out her life, from there. But I gave her what I didn't have growing up. And all throughout from, birth till she went to college, everything was all Black, everything, every time, we could. And, from Shape Community Center to, all of the above. So.
Yeah. Okay. So at the end of the day, we're grown. We had our experiences. My children, my daughter's just now getting ready to go to the 8th grade. So she's not even going to high school yet. But I want her to start thinking about these things, make the best decision for her. I will guide her in a way that I think she should go. But at the end of the day, I'm always going to let her make her own decisions. If somebody offering some money, girl, you might just have to go over there and deal with them racists. If you get a scholarship, if they paying for it, girl, you better go over there and deal with Brad and Tom and Susie and Karen. Tell them, hey, girl, hey.
Right.
But I would obviously prefer her to be able to grow and thrive in a place where she's going to be nurtured for who she is. She doesn't have to water herself down in order to make somebody else comfortable. There's a whole life of that, out here in corporate America, whether you have a business or whether you in public education or whether you in, sales or wherever you are. There's a lot of us having to water ourselves down. And in that environment, you will meet so many strong women who are unapologetic, and they want your voice. They want your strength. They want your power. They know how to direct it. They know how to do that without trying to tamper it down. And so I feel like, the more positive Black women my child is exposed to, the better she will be able to understand who she is as an individual. my son, the more, even though he has a strong father and a strong grandfather and a strong family and friends and male influences, the more of those that he's exposed to, the better he'll be able to find himself as a Black man in this world. And so I feel like there's so many things out here in this country that can bring us down. I feel like those institutions are designed to just bring us up. And I feel like they're designed to just help us to be the most and the best that we can be. And I don't think anybody else is able to really bring that out of us in that way. You spoke of a counselor. I had a counselor, a professor at Prairie View, Indian lady. I know she was actually Indian. But she was the first person to tell me, don't compare myself to anybody else. Because I remember coming to her, being down, like I said, I went to Grambling and I transferred to Prairie View. So I was a couple of years behind. The curriculum didn't really match up. And so, these kids, they straight out of high school, they flying through, they got all A's, their parents bought them cars. And I was just like, I don't fit in with these kids. And she was just like, don't compare yourself to anybody else. And that obviously was a defining moment for me as a young person. I'm not saying it couldn't have happened anywhere else, but it happened there at Prairie View, and it happened during a time when my biology teacher wrote the textbook, you know what I'm saying, as a Black man, and as the African-American literature teacher was in the textbook, you know what I'm saying? She wrote a Black girls, when Black girls, y'all know they made the movie. When Black girls aren't enough and consider suicide or something like that.
What?
I can't remember the name of the lady, but y'all know what I'm talking about. Anyway, so it was just powerful.
Right.
It was nothing. I don't think there's anywhere else that I could have gotten that experience from in a whole.
Right.
Anyway,
but I also think because you had that experience, parents are the first educators of your children. So because you had that experience, I think your kids will be great regardless of where they go, because they got a strong Black woman as a mother. You and your ex-husband, are examples of Black excellence to them. So they got a good footing, so I don't think that they would necessarily miss anything if they went to a private white university, PWI, because they have y'all, you know what I mean? They have y'all. So you would help guide their decisions, their footsteps, regardless of where they're getting their education from.
Possibly. Anywho, I think that is pretty much all I wanted to say on the topic. Did you have any closing thoughts on HBCU versus PWI?
No, none. I feel like get an education, regardless of how you get it. And all roads don't necessarily lead to college,
Yes.
I think so much emphasis is placed on going to school, but if you don't give them examples of what to study, what to major in, those are critical. You tell somebody, oh, go to school. Okay, so what's the outcome of this? What's the goal? You go to school to major in what? What have I been exposed to? What do I like? What am I going to do with this degree once I get it? How am I going to equate this degree into some monetary, success? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to be able to take care of yourself, take care of your family. So I think, not only should you guide them towards whatever university you want them to go to, give them some other tools and some nuggets of things that they, can do. So expose them to all different types of careers before it's time to go to college. In college is the wrong time to be trying to figure it out. You should already know, I think I'm gonna go to law school now. That's what I always wanted to do. Take the LSAT. See what happens.
That reminds me of another video we're gonna do soon. How many degrees make a six figures and you ain't spent a day in college, or you got a 2-year degree? Because they are out there, guys. And just because I got, untold student loans, don't mean you have to. Don't mean you have to, guys, at all. And you could be doing a whole lot better than me financially with not a day in college.
Facts.
Next video.
Bye, guys. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Tell a friend.
And comment. And subscribe.
Bye, guys.